All right, welcome to the deep dive. You ready to get into some seriously interesting stuff?
Always.
Today we're diving headfirst into the world of government contracts, but not just any contract.
This one's a biggie.
This one's got my attention, that's for sure.
Definitely caught my eye, too.
It's a sources sought notice, and just the name, it sounds kind of secretive, right?
Yeah, like the government's on a treasure hunt.
It's from the U.S. Army Cyber Center of Excellence, and basically it's their way of shopping around for companies who can train their cyber warriors.
And they're willing to spend some serious cash to find the right partners.
Oh yeah, we're talking a potential $248 million contract ceiling. That's a whole lot of zeros for training.
Tells you how seriously the Army's taking cyber warfare.
Absolutely. This isn't just about buying the latest fancy tech. It's about investing in the brains behind it.
It's about building a cyber force that can outthink and outmaneuver any adversary.
Okay, so let's break this down. The Army's looking for companies to train instructors, specifically at Fort Eisenhower in Georgia.
That's right. And the document is very specific about the type of training they need.
Professional and management development training, that's what they're calling it.
That's the key phrase right there.
So what's that telling us about the kind of cyber experts they're after?
Well, think about it this way.
I'm all ears.
They're not just looking for brilliant coders or hackers.
They want the strategic minds.
Exactly. Leaders, strategists, people who can make critical decisions under pressure and adapt to new threats constantly.
They're not just building a group of tech wizards, they're building a cyber officer corps.
You got it. People who can lead, manage, and make those tough calls in the heat of battle.
Now, the document gets into some specifics about the kind of companies they're looking for.
They want to make sure they're attracting the right talent and experience.
Right, and there's this MA-IDIQ code 611430. I gotta admit, I had to look that one up.
Oh, the joys of government jargon.
Right.
But basically, it's their way of classifying industries and making sure they're targeting companies with the right expertise.
So they're being very deliberate in their search.
Absolutely. No shotgun approach here. They know exactly what they need.
And get this, to even be considered a small business in this arena, you need at least $15 million in annual receipts.
Yeah, that's a pretty hefty size standard.
Tells you something about the scale and complexity of the contracts we're talking about.
These aren't your average startups. They're looking for established players with a proven track record.
Speaking of established players, the document even lists 6 companies that are already involved.
Gives you a little peek behind the curtain, right?
Right. Almost like we're armchair detectives trying to piece together the puzzle.
So what do you think these companies have in common?
Well, if I had to guess, they probably have backgrounds in cybersecurity, training, maybe even some military connections.
You're probably spot on. They've likely got experience running large-scale training programs, maybe even simulated cyber attacks.
Yeah, high-stakes stuff, just like the real deal.
It's got to be realistic, intense, preparing those soldiers for anything.
And the document lays out this demonstrated capability section. It's where the rubber meets the road for these companies.
It's where they have to prove they've got the skills and experience to deliver.
It's like the Army's saying, all right, show us what you got.
Exactly. They want proof, not just promises. Details on past projects, the types of training they've done, were they the lead contractor or part of a team?
It's all about vetting their capabilities.
Making sure they can handle the pressure and complexity of this kind of training.
Now, point number 5 in this section really caught my eye. They're specifically looking for small businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, businesses in historically underutilized zones.
It's great to see that emphasis on diversity and inclusion.
Right. They're making a real effort to level the playing field.
And I think it's smart. It brings in a wider range of perspectives and ideas, ultimately strengthens the cybersecurity industry as a whole.
It makes you wonder what those companies are thinking, what kind of feedback they're giving on the draft performance statement.
Oh, I bet they're scrutinizing every detail.
I know I would be if I were in their shoes.
Right. You'd want to make sure you could meet those requirements and deliver on those promises.
And speaking of collaboration, the document gets into contract types, and I gotta be honest, this is where I got a little lost.
Oh, the wonderful world of government contracting language. It can be a bit dense.
It can. They mention multiple indefinite, quantity-indefinite delivery contracts with firm fixed-price task orders. Can you break that down for us mere mortals?
Sure. Think of it like this. The Army knows they need a lot of cyber training.
But they don't know exactly how much or when.
Right. So instead of one massive contract, They're setting up a system where they can order specific training task orders as needed.
So it's flexible, they can adapt as their needs change.
Exactly. And each task order has a fixed price, no surprises down the line.
Makes sense, keeps things transparent and predictable.
Just like you'd want it if you were buying a service.
Makes sense. And they're really trying to be proactive. They even ask potential contractors to identify any risks they see with this approach.
They want to get ahead of any potential problems, work together to find solutions.
Smart move. It shows they're serious about making this work.
And it fosters a sense of partnership.
Yeah.
Everyone working towards the same goal.
All right, so what have we learned so far? We've got a massive cyber training initiative on our hands.
Definitely a high priority for the Army.
They're focused on developing leaders, not just technical skills.
Strategic thinkers who can navigate the complexities of cyber warfare.
And they're committed to working with a diverse range of companies, big and small.
Creating a strong and resilient cyber ecosystem.
We've just scratched the surface of this sources sought notice, but it's already giving us some fascinating insights.
It's like a window into the Army's strategic thinking about cyber warfare.
And how they're preparing for the challenges ahead.
Stay tuned, because we're going even deeper in part 2. We'll delve into what this training might look like and explore what it tells us about the future of cyber conflict.
We'll be right back after a short break. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. In part 1, we got into the nuts and bolts of this sources sought notice from the Army Cyber Center of Excellence.
We saw just how serious they are about finding the right partners to train their cyber warriors.
Yeah, and it's not just about technical skills, it's about developing leaders who can think strategically in the cyber domain.
It's like they're building a whole new kind of army for the digital age.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What would this training actually look like? What are we talking about here?
Well, the document gives us some clues. Network defense is definitely going to be a big part of it.
Making sure those military networks are locked down tight, right?
Exactly. But they're also looking at offensive cyber operations.
So not just playing defense, but knowing how to strike back if needed.
That's right. And then there's cyber intelligence.
Gathering information about the enemy, kind of like digital espionage.
Exactly. You need to know what the other side is up to if you want to stay ahead of the game.
This is all starting to sound very James Bond-esque. I'm picturing secret rooms filled with screens, lines of code flashing by.
Well, maybe not the explosions, but you're not far off.
Right, cyber warfare might be silent and unseen, but it's just as high stakes as any other kind of conflict.
Absolutely. The consequences can be just as devastating.
And we can't forget, they're looking for companies that can provide professional and management development training.
That tells me they're not just training technicians.
They want to create a cadre of cyber leaders.
People who can make tough decisions, manage complex operations.
And even navigate the ethical and legal gray areas of cyber warfare.
That's a whole other layer of complexity, right?
It is. I mean, in the physical world, you have rules of engagement, treaties, things like that.
But in cyberspace, the lines can be a lot blurrier.
So this training needs to go beyond just the technical stuff.
It needs to address the ethical dilemmas, the legal implications, all of that.
They need individuals who can think critically, understand the consequences of their actions.
And operate responsibly, even when the rules aren't always clear.
So we've got this intense training covering everything from hacking to ethics.
It's about developing a well-rounded cyber force.
And all of this is happening at Fort Eisenhower in Georgia, right?
Well, actually, it's called Fort Gordon now, but yes, that's where the U.S. Army Cyber Center of Excellence is located.
So kind of like the Pentagon of cyber warfare.
You could say that. It's their hub for cyber operations, training, research, everything.
And this sources sought notice is like a backstage pass into that world.
It gives us a glimpse into how the Army is preparing for the future of warfare.
And speaking of the future, let's talk about that $248 million contract ceiling.
Ah, yes, the money.
That's not exactly pocket change. In part 3, we'll dive into what that means for the companies vying for this massive opportunity.
We'll explore the financial stakes, the potential benefits, and what it all tells us about the growing importance of a cybersecurity industry.
It's going to be fascinating. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've dug into what the Army is looking for in their cyber training, how they're going about finding the right companies.
And now it's time to talk about the elephant in the room.
The money. We keep mentioning that $248 million contract ceiling. That's not just a drop in the bucket.
It's a serious chunk of change, no doubt about it.
Shows you how much they're prioritizing this whole cyber training initiative.
Absolutely. It's a clear signal that they're willing to invest heavily in building a top-notch cyber force.
But remember, that figure represents the maximum they could spend.
It's not necessarily what they will spend.
So it's like a budget, but with some wiggle room?
Exactly. Gives them flexibility as things evolve, and in the world of cybersecurity, things change fast.
You always got to be ready for the next big threat.
That's why that flexibility is so important.
But even with that flexibility, $248 million is still a massive opportunity for those companies competing for these contracts.
Oh, absolutely. That kind of money could really transform a business, allow them to expand their operations, hire top talent, invest in research and development.
And it's not just about the money, is it?
You're right. There's also the prestige that comes with working with the U.S. Army, especially in such a crucial field.
Landing a contract like this is a major credibility boost.
He says, we're the best at what we do.
And that can open doors to other opportunities, not just with the government, but with private sector clients, too.
Definitely a win-win situation.
It makes you wonder what the competition's like between these companies. Is it cutthroat, or is there a sense of collaboration?
Probably a bit of both, I'd say.
I mean, the stakes are high, right?
Of course. They all want to win those contracts. But at the same time, there's a recognition that the cybersecurity industry as a whole benefits from raising the bar.
We all need to be better, stronger, smarter to stay ahead of those threats.
Right, a rising tide lifts all boats, as they say.
Now, remember how the Army emphasized working with small businesses? How does that play out with these big contracts?
Well, they've got these subcontracting goals in place.
Meaning?
Even if a large company wins the main contract, they're required to subcontract a portion of the work to smaller businesses.
So it's not just the big guys getting all the pie.
Exactly. It
Oh.
ensures that smaller, more specialized companies get a piece of the action, a chance to contribute their expertise.
And that diversity of thought and experience is invaluable, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It fosters innovation, competition, and ultimately leads to a stronger, more resilient cyber ecosystem.
And that benefits everyone in the end, right?
Exactly. A win for the Army, a win for the industry, and ultimately a win for national security.
So, listener, as we wrap up this deep dive, what have we learned? The Army's making a significant investment in cyber training.
They're not messing around.
They're focused on developing leaders who can think strategically and ethically in the cyber domain.
Leaders who can adapt to an ever-changing threat landscape.
And they're committed to working with a diverse range of companies, big and small, to achieve their goals.
It's a smart approach, building a robust and resilient cyber force.
And it highlights just how critical cybersecurity has become to national security.
It's no longer just a niche issue, it's intertwined with every aspect of our lives.
It's a fascinating and complex world, and we've only scratched the surface, but hopefully this deep dive is giving you a new appreciation for the challenges and the opportunities in this rapidly evolving field.
It's a field that's only going to become more important in the years to come.
So stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged, because the future of cybersecurity is in all our hands.